Outcome in cost minimization. What is the outcome? The same. So we don't have to measure it. And the simplest example here is headache gone. If both NSAIDs do the same job, then all you want to buy is a cheaper one, right? That's why you're calling it cost minimization. There is an outcome, but we're not bothered with measuring it because the outcome just happens in 30-40 minutes, the headache is gone, the migraine gone, right? So that's cost minimization. So those three techniques. So today I'm switching here to cost effectiveness. This is the most popular technique in healthcare literature, doing cost evaluation. And what's the difference between these three? So cost minimization is here, the outcome is the same, so you just have to minimize cost. That's the decision to be made. Cost benefit tells you whether it's worth it or not. Why? Because the outcomes are measured in dollars. So you can do a benefit cost analysis or a net benefit analysis and make a decision based on your budget constraint. And now we're talking about cost effectiveness analysis. Here also there's an outcome. So it's how effective is it on the outcome. That's what it is. And also helps you in make decisions. So everything I've been talking about has one. All three of the talks discussion have been based on this. We define it, we describe the approach. So obviously there will be questions on this objective in every of these. What are the advantages and disadvantages? What's the advantage of cost benefit analysis? The one we did last time. It puts everything on the same page, right? Dollars and dollars. So it's easy to make decisions. It tells you the benefit cost ratio, it tells you the net benefits, it tells you whether it's worth it or not. What's the disadvantage of that method? You have to hang dollar signs. Use the willingness to pay approach, contingent valuation method, the reveal preference, or the human capital approach. Because the market is not readily valuing the outcomes in dollar terms. An analyst needs to do it, to do the economic evaluation. Now, that's an advantage of this method today's. You don't have to hack dollar signs on the outcome. The cost is always in dollars because the market is giving the data. It tells you what a physician costs, what a pharmacist costs, medication, hospital stay, and all that is denominated in dollars cost. It's the outcomes which is the issue. So again, we talk about advantages and disadvantages. Then in this way, this chapter really builds up on, since it's there in the literature so much, the results of a cost effectiveness analysis, the different ways of presenting it to you. What are the different ways of presenting benefit cost results? A benefit cost ratio or net benefits? What are the different ways of doing this one? That's what we talk about. Two things we talk about. These results are presented in two ways. The next bullet tells you the CE grid and CE plane. We have questions on both of these ways of presenting. Why? Because if you read a journal article, it's presenting data that way, you should be able to access it. And next is, we talk about some other related concepts. Final outcome and intermediate outcome, okay? Did we talk about the difference between efficacy and effectiveness earlier? I mentioned last time also there is a question on that. And what are the difference between the terms? I'm calling this methodology cost effectiveness analysis. I'm not calling it cost efficacy analysis. What's the difference between efficacy and effectiveness?
Efficacy in the trial.
Sorry?
Efficacy in the trial.
Clinical trials?
Effectiveness in real life.
That's right. That's a good way to remember it. So if you see a question which does that, then efficacy is basically in clinical controlled environments, experimental conditions. And it's more laboratory or other more controlled experimental settings. Efficacy is more, effectiveness is more in the real world. A good example to remember is in the real world. For example, it may be very efficacious therapeutically. The dose response is very nice. But in the real world, if you can't afford it, what's the point? It may be very efficacious, but not very effective. So the FDA and others, and the analysis we do, over here we're talking about is in the real world. Whether will it be effective or not. Another example was if you compare insulin therapy or oral agents to control glycemic control, insulin requires you to inject, and many patients don't like to do that, and so it's not that effective. So they'll avoid doing it. So what's the difference before I get into that. Why is this after the hyphen coming as effectiveness and not benefit analysis or minimization? Effectiveness means effective on one outcome, and it's clinically measured. It's measured in its physical units. How effective it is in measuring, reducing temperature, it's a clinical measure. How effective is it in controlling A1C, clinical measure. How effective is it in measuring deaths, mortality avoided, deaths avoided. These are all single one outcome, clinically determined. So it's not multiple outcomes. What are you doing in cost-benefit analysis? There can be multiple outcomes, and I convert all of them into dollars and add them up, right? It all becomes apples, 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 because they're all in dollars. Here I can't add mortality rate with temperature control, with pain alleviation. They're all different outcomes. I'm not putting dollar signs. So it's always on one outcome. Cost effectiveness is on one outcome only. That's the difference in this. So you have a question on the exam asking you what are the differences, and if you can tell which approach is appropriate for that. So this slide tells is that, and then sometimes an advantage of this method is because sometimes monetary valuation of outcome is impractical. It's not easy, you cannot do it. Another advantage of this technique, the one we're talking about today, is because clinicians relate more to the outcome in clinical terms, physical limits. Clinicians, want to see temperature, right? And they want to see blood pressure control, those kind of units. And effective on one, because the patient has come for hypertension management, they just want to see BP control. If the patient has come for diabetes, they just want to make a decision based on sugar control, right? Glycemic control. So they'll change or tweak your dosage for diabetes based on one outcome, sugar. So, of glycemic control. So that's why cost effectiveness is very popular in the literature in healthcare. This technique is not really used in any other fields. Cost benefit analysis is used, as I mentioned, it's used in environmental decisions and all those things. But cost effectiveness is very popular in healthcare. Here's a bullet. The outcome is measured in its physical or real terms rather than in monetary terms. So it can compare only alternatives which have the same outcome. That's why I mentioned insulin and oral agents, or different oral agents. They're all having the same outcome, A1C, right? So that's you can't compare outcomes which are in different units. That's the limitation of cost effectiveness analysis. It cannot tell. That's why it can't tell something is worth it or not. Compare cost of saving lives using radar systems or ambulances. It's the same outcome. Lives saved. Then you can compare it. But you cannot compare life-saving ambulances with arthritis-reducing drugs. Why not? Because this is measured in lives saved, and this is measured in some units of pain. So you can't compare that with using this because the outcomes are being compared in different units. Had both of them been put on dollars together, then you can compare it again. You see what's going on? You guys have a class after this too?
Yeah.
A test?
No.
You guys are very quiet today. I don't know what's going on. The sun is shining. The weather is better. You're tired?
Yeah.
From the week? Yeah, I'm not showing it. What? How many P1s are tired like this? How many P3s is that? Okay. Typically, P1s are more than, first year guys.
What?
What?
What is your measurable terms?
I'm just assuming you're quiet and paying attention, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. So remember, I don't want to deal with this stuff when the semester gets over with you guys. Go on rotation, okay? Don't drop the ball for a few points. If you see, just do what I'm telling you to do and then you're done. You hear, pay attention, and be responsive. Okay, right? So what am I done, finished? I've finished introducing cost effectiveness analysis. I've finished describing it. I talked a little bit about its benefits and costs. Its advantages and disadvantages. Now I'm going to tell you how to calculate it. It's similar to how the benefit cost ratio is done. the same thing. Again, what does this word show up again? What does this mean? Incremental means?
Gradual,
Yeah, I know what you mean. What's the word?
marginal.
Marginal. At the margin, plus one, plus more, right? 1 more hour. So I'm asking you guys to pay attention for 1 more hour today, okay? Then you can be tired after that. So, cost effectiveness ratio is also again marginal analysis incrementally. Because you're making a decision from going to A to B, how much does it change your benefits and costs when you go from A to B? That's the whole deal. So how is the ratio? It looks like a cost benefit ratio. What do you put in the numerator? Difference between incremental, right? Incremental cost. You're going from alternative 1 to alternative 2. What's the difference in cost? You put that in numerator. Change in cost. And what do you put in the denominator? Q2 minus Q1, change in outcome, quantitative outcome, right? How much did it change? Q2 minus Q1. And that's a cost benefit ratio to some extent, but we don't call it the cost benefit ratio. We call it the incremental cost effectiveness ratio because the units in the denominator are physical units. It's not in dollars. So 1 and 2 refer alternatives in their dimension. C is the cost per person. Q is the whichever way you measure the outcome. In A1C units, in blood pressure units, in temperature units, pain units, whatever. QT minus Q1 is the denominator. It compares alternative ways of attaining a single type of outcome measure. It could have been mortality also changed. That's avoided. One outcome. It's not multi outcomes. How effective it is, how in terms of each dollar you spend, how much bang for the buck, how much savings do you have for each additional unit of whatever you're measuring it in on the denominator. Is that clear?
What is a unit?
What's the unit? Unit means how you're measuring. How you measuring temperature. Taking centigrade. What's the unit? Depends what you have. What we'll look at example. So here's an example of what you just brought up, what unit. So we're comparing drug A and drug B. Look, it looks similar to the one example I put in the last class, but it's slightly different. Drug A produces a cure rate 80% of the patients treated, and drug B produces a cure in 90% of the cases. So what's the unit of outcome measured over here?
Percentage.
Change in cure, right? And it's measured in, it's given in measures in a percentage form. That's your unit. Unit is cure rate. 80%. So it's 0.8 for drug A and 0.9 for drug B. Which one will you take? Which alternative will you pick? 90%. But that's not where the story ends because we'll see the cost now, right? That's where the trade-off is. So medically, yeah. Clinical effectiveness, efficacy, you're right. Maybe more. Drug B is superior. But here's the last bullet. It says, but drug B costs 30% more. Now, it's saying 30% more. If it was just a drug like 30% meant 10 cents more, will you do it?
Yeah.
Right? You will. What if the drug is really expensive? Each dose is like, running into thousands of dollars each treatment. Then 30% means a lot, right? If you can't afford it, you don't have insurance, that 30% suddenly becomes a lot. Then you need to see from going from 80 to 90% cure rate, is it worth the money or not, right? But it won't answer the question worth. You still have to make a decision on your own. You can't make that. It will just tell you when from 80 to 90%, you end up paying 30% more in costs. So it's a relative decision. It just generates information. So if you look at the example, look at the simple example again. Drug A is just $10 per treatment course, okay? And the next one, drug B, the alternative is 30% per treatment course. And it cures the infection. Maybe it's an antibiotic you're talking about. The next is $3 more and it fixes, and the cure rate is more efficient or faster. 0.9 cures for B, 0.8 for drug A, and you can do the cost effectiveness ratio I told you earlier, the formula. In the numerator, you have 13 minus 10, change in cost. Denominator, the outcome. You're talking about the unit, right? 0.8 minus 0.9 minus 0.8 in this case. And so for each $30 expense, divide by 0.1, so per cure it costs $30 more per cure. Now that's a fair amount of money, in terms, even for an antibiotic infection. But if it says for UTI, we'll pay those $30, right? It gets more serious. Because UTI complications can be really nasty, you say, yeah. If the doctor says, look, take this treatment, it's more known to be more effective, efficacious, and all that stuff, you pay $20 more. And likewise, I said, if this was not $30, this was $3,000 more, you pause. If it's $30,000 more, depending on how complicated the treatment option, it becomes a big decision then. But look at how it's presented. Our cost effectiveness analysis is not saying bang for the buck. It's how much bang you get for per cure. That's why it's not worth it. Okay? It's not getting you that information. It's just giving you information that per cure is this much. And so each of the methods we are talking about gives you different information. Each has an advantage. Each has some negative, downside also. Another way of interpreting this same thing. In the last class, I talked how to interpret it was worth it. This one is not worth it. How do you interpret it? Cost for each additional cure. I've underlined the word additional. Additional is also the margin, incrementally. It will cost an additional $30 to achieve an additional cure by using drug B. That's the trade-off. Another way to look at it is cost per cure. I could have taken drug A, $10, divided by 0.8, its cure rate, comes to $12.50 per cure. The cost for drug B is $30 per 0.9, it's $14 per cure. It's a different way of telling the same thing. But look at the bottom bullet, which I've been repeating again and again. It tells you which drug is more expensive per cure. That it does. But it does not tell you whether it's worth it or not. That term worth is only for benefit. Okay? And you see both are in cure rate, it's apples and apples. It can't compare apples and oranges. Benefit cost analysis can do it because it puts the pricing of apples and oranges in dollars so you can compare it. Here you can't.
Excuse me, doctor.
Yes.
What did you say? You said that for what it tells us that is which drug is less expensive to cure.
Yeah,
It tells us about the cure, but does not tell us about the what or the what.
Worth, I said only benefit cost.
The benefit.
How much bang you're getting for each bus, that benefit cost.
Benefit cost.
So last class also different ways of presenting benefit cost ratio information. Here you have a table and it's telling you different ways of presenting data. What's the topic over here? GI, symptom-free days, SMDs. Drug A costs $6,000 per year, $600 per year. Drug B is cheaper, $210 per year. Drug A, the symptom-free days is 130 bucks, 130, what is it, dollars? SMDs, 130, drug B is 200, drug C is 250. Okay, symptom-free days. So you can see symptom-free days are different for each one of them. Percentage healed by drug A is 50%, 70%, 80%. Healing rate is higher between A, B, and C. So I didn't talk about incremental. Here, this is just giving me average also. Average is just, how do you take an average? You just take the total divided by the unit, and you get $4.61 on average for symptom-free days for drug A. Likewise, you take $210 divided by 200 symptom-free days. Each symptom-free day costs only $105. Just like for the cure rate we had it, So this one, drug C is $530 per year. It costs $250, $2.12 per symptom-free day. It's still not telling you whether it's worth it or not. It's just telling you how much it costs per symptom-free day. And per cure, drug A, we take the dollars again. The cure rate is 50.5, 50%, 1,200 cure rate is the price for drug A. Per cure is $300 and $662. So which one will you take? Which option will you pick? The only way to decide that in a better way is to do the incremental cost effectiveness ratios. How on the margin it does better. So which one will you eliminate between A, B and C? Just by looking at it.
A and C.
B compared with A, and C compared with A. So you compare B with A. A is way expensive, right? And fewer symptom-free days, right? It's dominated. That's not a decision then. Same thing with drug C. It's not $600 and it's way more symptom-free days, right? Cure rate is much higher with C, cure rate higher is much with B, cure rate is only 50%. Drug A is clearly dominated, right? So the word to use is dominated. That's the term we are using in a technical kind of way, okay? So it dominates both. When something is dominated, means it's dominated both by cost and by outcome also. So there's hardly a decision there. You don't have to do an analysis. Drug A gets ruled out. It's simply obsolete now. So that's one way to say it. There's better technology, there's better options coming up. Now the problem is with drug B and C. What's going on with drug B and C? Symptom-free days is more, right? But it costs way more than double, right? Cure rate is much higher, is 10% higher, but again it costs more, right? For these two guys, you need to do incremental cost ratios, because these two guys you need to figure out for an incremental benefit or outcome, how much more will it be? So here you're going to apply the cost benefit ratio, cost effectiveness ratios. What do you put in the numerator again? The cost, right? 530 minus 210, and you put the outcome in the denominator. And 2 units over here. Symptom-free days in this case, or the cure rate, right? The units are different, right? So you get two different cost effectiveness ratios. In terms of symptom-free days, $6.40 for a symptom-free day. And for a cure, $3,200 per cure. Now again, it depends on your income level, how much your budget is every day. Will you be willing to have one symptom-free day for GI for $6.40 per day? It's not, it doesn't sound that expensive. Even for allergy, if you take one pill, it costs about $1, right? For per allergy-free day. And that's a good cost. We keep buying allergy pills and so on. Likewise, even for heartburn or whatever this GI input is, $6.40 to avoid that, it is a fair, it's an expense. So that's how you make this $1 million. That was given to you. This information is given to you. What's above this? This is given to you. 80%. So 80% is 0.8, 70% is 0.7. That's given to you. And then you calculate the cost effectiveness. What if I told you that if you don't have any GI symptom in a given day, you still go to work. You go to work for a full day. Otherwise, you shut your work day and come back because it's too much. You can't handle it. You work half a day and you lose $12 per day. Then you see the benefit cost ratio, how it comes about. If I told you how much it is worth a symptom-free day, if it's $30, then yeah, it outweighs the cost, right? You will take the medication. But if your efficiency is low that day, but it doesn't equate to $6.40, then you need benefit cost analysis. If you start hanging dollar signs on the symptom-free day, then it becomes cost benefit. So in this case, in cost effectiveness, once again, the symptom-free day is not denominated in dollars. The cure is not denominated in dollars. In the previous methodology, last class, cost benefit, we measured it in dollars. So it could tell you whether it's worth it or not. Now I'm on the latter part of that opening bullet. How are these results presented in a journal article sometimes? Cost effectiveness ratios. So we pay attention how what this grid is. It's a grid. It's not like a table, it's actually got a grade, why you can see it now. So you have cost effectiveness over here. Lower cost goes this way in the column, and effectiveness is measured in the rows. So something is lower cost and lower effective. What does that mean? Cost is lower, lower effective, right? That means if you want to save money, less effective, right? There's a trade-off, right? Whenever there's a trade-off, you will conduct an ICR, incremental cost effectiveness analysis. Now let's look at this. It's lower cost, same effectiveness. Same effectiveness, cost low. Is there any trade-off? No. It's like cost minimization, right? No need to do an ICR. Lower cost, higher effectiveness. No brainer, right? It costs less and more effective. It's dominant. It will dominate the other one, right? That's the term over here in G, right? In cell G. Now look at lower cost, lower effectiveness, same cost. You pick the one which is, it's not a big deal, right? It's dominated in some ways, but so you don't do an ICR. Look at this one. Not only is it lower cost, it costs more too. Like the case we had, right? It's dominated. It dominated both in terms of cost and in terms of effectiveness. There is no trade-off. So C is dominated. So only is diagonal where it's this way. Do you have to do a cost effectiveness analysis? Why is E said arbitrary? You want to do it or not? Why? Same effectiveness, same cost, right? You still might make a decision. You might say, look, make on something else. The pill size is smaller or bigger, right? Or it tastes bad or good or not. Or you make a decision based on side effects. But typically it's arbitrary. If the doctor says the side effects are the same, you might say, I just don't like that pill, it's just too large to swallow. So same cost, same effectiveness, it's up to you. Those are the reasons. It's arbitrary, make a decision on your own. But essentially, dominated you should pay attention to, dominant you should pay attention to, and these two called, the lead diagonal, where you do a cost effectiveness analysis. Are you okay with that grade? Alright. So there is an example for ulcers, the GI one, I guess. And there's both dominated A, right? B dominated A, C dominated A, right? So the cost effectiveness ratio is trivial, it's dominant. Lower cost, higher effectiveness. B was lower cost, higher effective. C was lower cost, higher effective compared to A. That's the dominant. B and C were dominating A. But the real reason we came is that from the table, to put the results on a grid, we compared C and D actually, right? And C was higher cost and higher effective also, right? Compared to B. It's kind of confusing. You got A, B, C, D for the cells, and then you have drugs also by the same labels. I would have called this alternative 3 over alternative 2, so they don't get confused with the ABCDs, the letters.
So now,
I think they can.
is dominant compared with C?
No, it just gives you information. It doesn't tell you. It just tells you that C is higher cost and higher effective. You make that decision. Remember, it says symptom-free days costed so many dollars more per symptom-free day. You make the decision. It's not going to tell you whether it's worth it or not. See over here, the cost effectiveness ratio for these came down to $6.40. For the increased benefit, you have to include a higher cost of $6.40. You make the decision there. Is it worth it or not? For each day. Or for the cure, you make the decision. It costs $3,200 more per cure. Your decision. And the decision doesn't mean that you're never going to get it fixed. Maybe this month you don't have the money. So you tell the doc, hey, I bought a car, I'll do it next month or next 3 months down the line when I have the money for the cure procedure.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
How can you relate the idea of perspective in
Idea
regards
of what?
to this? How can you relate the idea of perspective in connection to this?
Ideal perspective?
Yes, like we did in cost benefit, we had the perspective of the buyer. And the
Perspective of the, oh yeah,
Yes,
good
sir.
question. Perspective matters in everything, okay? So, in every of these methods, perspective matters. Now, from a patient perspective, I've been talking mostly from the patient perspective over here, right? How much you, I could have put this from the perspective of, that's where the challenge comes in. The doctor's perspective, the provider's perspective could be different. The provider might say, look, it's worth it, okay? $6.40 for a symptom-free day, and you work better from the provider's perspective. But then typically you should take it from the society's perspective. And what are the employer gonna think? If you got health coverage, you might not think twice, you know. Depends on the employer. So perspective matters, but then it's up to you how to think about it. Right? So if you're talking to your boss, I'm just trying to make it very simple. If you're talking to your boss, and the boss says, look, you know, you covered, or you may discuss, you've got full coverage, do it, you know, something of that sort. But perspective matters. Make decisions from the society's perspective. But it's not very clear over here. That's why benefit cost analysis is good, because you can tell cost went down and all that stuff, you know. That's a good point to bring up.
One more last question.
Yes,
So do you think cost effectiveness is not just enough to make decisions by itself?
none of them are actually. They are only ways of generating information. You give it to yourself and then you make a decision. Your phone may ring, so this decision could be completely different, you know. If I'm talking about myself, I may postpone the decision to get the procedure done. But if I'm talking about a child, I may make a decision quicker, right? So it's only information you've got, you make a decision. Phone rings, someone says something, you may go for it or not, right? So it's only information for decision making. This whole class is only generating information for decision making. There can be other factors on which you can make decisions. But this is economic evaluation techniques, it's generating information. And depends on the situation, the treatment option. Now this is, I mentioned in the opening slide. So we talked about the grid. In the opening slide I mentioned a plane also, right? Now look how this is set up. Instead of a grid, it's in terms of cost effectiveness ratios. What's measured on the vertical axis? Cost effectiveness, right? Cost more
Cost
plus
difference.
sign. The change, incremental, see how it is, the incremental difference is put over there. You not measure actual cost, the change in cost you measure on the vertical axis. And the change in outcomes on the horizontal. So anything to the, here is the zero origin. And here at this point, what's happening at the zero? Nothing. There's no change in cost, no change in outcome. That's your baseline, starting point. You have a treatment A, you remain with treatment A, no change in cost, no change in outcome, right? Once you start moving to an alternative, treatment B, then you'll see if the cost change higher, because of this quadrant, it's more effective over here. So cost differences and effectiveness difference, that's the ratio. So I can't scribble on this, but if I was to draw a line over here, draw a point over here, so I take the cost difference from the numerator and find a point over here, right? So look at the example. What's the numerator over here? Change in cost is how much? 530 minus 210 is? For when you're comparing C and D, what's the change in cost? You go from 530 to 210, right? 320, right? So $320, and what's the change in the outcome? 150, right? So on the grid, I'll plot the change in cost $300, 300, and the change in outcome 50. I'll find a point over here. Right? Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. That's how you're finding points. Once I have a point, if I draw a line from the 0 point to that, the slope of it is nothing else but the cost effectiveness ratio. So this thing, right? Sorry. Wow, it's a nice looking road. Straight road. So here's the no change, the baseline. Incrementally, cost difference plus cost negative, falls below that, effectiveness negative, effectiveness positive. So we found a point over here. How much was the cost we said? 3 what? 320. And change in effectiveness 50, right? That's the coordinates of this point. 50 and 320 on this plane. And if I draw a straight line over here, from here, how do I find the slope? How do you find the slope of a line? Rise over run, right? So you can see rise is change in cost, which was divided by change in outcome, which is the horizontal axis, which is change in outcome, measured in symptom-free days. So this is measured in dollars, this is measured in SFDs or Q rate, whichever we're taking, and that's nothing else but the formula for incremental cost effectiveness ratio. The slope of this line, where you plotted the ratio, is nothing but rise over run. Right, the whole thing is the slope. So it's a nice way of presenting data. So you have a whole bunch. I could have put, when I'm comparing B and C, and then the other alternative, I have 2-3 points if there are more alternatives. And I can see it graphically if I have got more points, right? This is just one example. So, alright, so what have I done up till now? If you look at my initial slide, we described it, what CEA is. We talked a little bit about its advantages and disadvantages, mainly in terms of dollar signs. Advantage is that clinicians like to measure clinical units. Then we saw different ways of presenting analysis in the table. Then we talked about the grid, we talked about the plane, and now we talk about some other points. We already said this is the last bullet. So basically I'm closing now with some other points. Sensitivity analysis I mentioned earlier, right? In the last class? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I really want someone to read this very slowly. I'm not going to read these bullets. So what is sensitivity analysis? What does it allow? So go slow. When you're reading it, someone put some enunciation in it. It allows you to do this. It's undertaking to do this. What does it mean? And so on. Okay? How to interpret the results of sensitivity analysis. So this slide is showing you what does it allow you to do, when you take it, how do you interpret the results. Okay, the third bullet and some bullets. So please, is there a volunteer? Oh, this part, delete this, okay? I don't know what's going on.
The whole thing?
No, not the whole thing. I'll just clean it up. Okay, please refer to the video now.
Allows one to determine how the results of an analysis could change when best guesses or assumption are varied over a relevant range of values.
So what's this one doing? In cost benefit analysis, I said last week's class, I said you can vary the discount rate, right? Someone says 5% discount rate, someone says no, I want to take 2% discount rate. The answer changes, right? So if you change any one assumption or one guess you have, what does your answer change? If your benefit cost ratio still says B is better than A, no matter what discount rate you take, you're good, you feel good, right? Someone says, look, your cost estimates are not good, use these estimates, and if even then that alternative comes up ahead, right? Then you're saying, look, even if you take a different set of costs, still B is better than A. So you're happy, right? You're confident about your decision. That's what sensitivity analysis is doing. If you change some assumptions, whether it's discount rate, cost estimates, outcomes, and even your best guesses you made, if you change them and still one alternative comes out ahead of the other, then look, it doesn't matter, you say, right? That's why you're doing sense. How sensitive is the outcome of the results? Next bullet.
Undertaken to allow for the potential for uncertainty in precision or methodological controversy in economic evaluation studies.
That's what's going on. When you second guess your best guess, if you change your assumptions, it may be because you think there's uncertainty, right? Or there's imprecision in how you measured something, or your guess may not be correct, or there's issues about how to compute it. You may not like willingness to pay methods. You may not like contingent valuation methods. I may not like the source of your data, right? In that case, I'm saying, look, let's see how results change if I change something. That's why you do it. Sensitivity analysis. Now what happens? The results. Third bullet.
Sensitive. The results vary depending on the range of evaluators, thereby weakening confidence in the study results.
So, if suppose I change my assumptions and my estimates based on these first two bullets, then A and B change. Earlier, so suppose there are two alternatives. A and B are being compared, okay? These two alternatives. If I change my assumptions, my estimates, if A dominates B, if A dominates again, if A keeps dominating, then I'm confident about my results. I'm saying, look, no matter what you do, A still comes out ahead. But if suppose it changes it, now B comes up, then you are like, I don't know what to do, right? Then you lose here. That's what this is saying. The variations in the estimates underlying an analysis produce significant alterations. Now B became dominant over A. That's a significant alteration of the result. Then more effort needs to go back to the drawing page. Because you're flip-flopping based on your assumptions, then more go back to the drawing board. Find better estimates, find more precise data, and so on, to make sure you made the right decision. Right now, if it flip-flops, then I don't know whether I'm making a right decision based on the assumption, right? So, but however, if variations in the assumptions or estimates underlying the analysis do not produce any change, A is still ahead of B, then one would have to have greater confidence to begin with. That's all this is saying. You should know this slide, okay? It summarizes sensitivity analysis. And how to do it in a journal article? There's a whole bunch of research agenda attached to this too, by the way. And the last example which we're doing for homework, it changes the discount rate, right? Or how much it costs to administer the vaccine. That's what it is, changing the variables. Now some related concepts, and this is the last slide. Now we talk about incremental cost benefit ratio. Sometimes you would want to convert it to dollars, okay, that's what this is saying. If I can superimpose willingness to pay, then it becomes a cost benefit analysis. And this is the price, lambda. So if I can figure out the price, I can change it to a cost benefit analysis. So the example was the symptom-free day. We're talking in terms of days, symptom-free days. But if I can put a value on my day, symptom-free day, then it becomes benefit cost analysis, right? If I put a price, each day is worth $100, then yeah, it's worth the $6.40 per symptom-free day, right? That's what's going on with this one. I can change it into benefit. That's where the word benefit is being used there. The moment I convert the outcome into dollars, it becomes a benefit. There are other things there too. There's something known as intermediate outcomes and primary outcomes. What's the difference? So for a primary outcome could be stroke, okay? But sometimes you don't have all that time to measure primary outcome, right? With the physician or the literature, it might be something. So what do you look at in intermediate outcome? So not stroke, a heart attack, or some cardio incident. What can you look at? Blood pressure control, right? Or something, or cholesterol readings, something of that sort, blockages and all. You're not waiting for surgery to be done, whether it's a stent or something else. You're looking at an intermediate outcome, cholesterol. You're looking at something else to make a decision, a closer up alternative. And that's just that bullet, that's all it's saying. Depends on what your analysis is doing. So if the journal article says, look, we're not going to the primary outcome, even mortality, we're looking at some intermediate outcomes, even sugar control is typically an intermediate outcome. Because you're not looking at the effects of diabetes otherwise. It is a risk factor for nearly every other disease and for mortality also. So you may look for intermediate outcomes. Mostly cost effectiveness analysis is done with intermediate clinical outcomes. Sugar control for the next 3 months. That's what your A1C measures, roughly. And this we've already done. So I just want someone to read it so we can conclude this. Efficacy and effectiveness, difference between the two. Someone from the back who's awake. I could see from your expression that you're willing to do it.
Which one?
The last bullet on effectiveness and efficacy. Just read slow.
Effectiveness relates to the relationship between.
No, read efficacy first.
Oh, okay. So efficacy relates to the relationships between an intervention and its health outcomes. Under ideal, usually experimental, clinical conditions, it seeks to answer, does the health procedure, service, or program do more good than it does harm? And can it work?
So in other words, efficacy tells you does it work, right? In controlled conditions. You won't even think about it if it doesn't even work, right?
Right.
And effectiveness is what?
Effectiveness relates to the relationship between an intervention and its health outcome. It usually measures it in physical units under actual practice conditions. It considers both efficacy and acceptance by those people to whom the service is offered, and it seeks to answer, does it work?
Can it work? Okay, but does it really work in practice? Alright, so does this substitute read the chapter? No. None of them. You have to read the chapter, it's not going to entertain, but I've followed the chapter so closely, it highlights the chapter reading. So anyone who's been coming late, if a full bunch of people are walking late, they just have to do a little bit more work reading it on their own. And stuff like that. Those who've been sitting here listening in, just cut down their study time for the day of the exam. So that's all the differences. When you pay attention, come on time. If you're here, pay attention. And it just, you get 1 or 2 questions correct, on the exam. So if I put 25 questions on the exam, you miss 5, 1/5 of your score falls, right? So you think it's, what I'm saying, again, it's always marginal, incremental. You're not going to get an absolute 0, but you may get a C minus, or you may get a B, or an A plus, whatever. So it's always at the margin. 5 minutes more paying attention, 5 minutes more paying attention, because I'm going through concepts. Each 5 minutes I cover some concepts. So I took so long really to just cover one chapter. So you will take this long to absorb stuff if you're reading on your own, if you are absent or not paying attention. And you might miss a question or two for that reason. Alright, I did some cost effectiveness analysis for you right now in terms of a grade and productivity per question. Alright, so there is, I posted another case for this chapter also on Blackboard. And same thing applies. The cases are just helping you study, okay? So let's see. The due date doesn't matter. I can make it due on the day of the exam and then after the exam. If that helps. Yeah, you can do that. As long as you populate, it's for your own exercise, okay? And so you can work together. It's just for practice. So what does the case for this one do? It helps you put it on the grade. Okay? And helps you calculate one by hand on your own manually. And so it's just for practice, okay? Mainly a study guide is stuff I've been doing, reading of the chapter, and do the cases if you can. But the cases I can make you do after the exam. So it will mark it grade, whatever due date I put on it. I think I put it on the day of the exam.
Yeah.
But it's the end of the day, you know. So Blackboard puts a timestamp on whenever you submit it. Alright, do you want to talk about the case or you want to just go home? Or do whatever else you want to do? Do whatever else you want to do? Doing little benefit cost analysis over here? The next 15 minutes or
And talk about that case.
11. Just time. I have to take roll call, of course. What do you want to do? Talk how many take drug I, drug B, and drug A. Drug I is ICS plus a placebo. That's the standard treatment. So the patient is still getting some treatment called ICS. And there are 220 subjects in that. Drug B is ICS plus breathe again, an additional intervention. And there are 210 over there. And the third treatment plan is ICS and asthma be gone. That's the treatment A. So ICS is there, that's why they're giving a placebo. So when it's randomized, you don't know whether they're getting breathe again, asthma be gone, or nothing but a placebo, right? So all of them are getting ICS, but they don't know which of these groups they're in, I, B, and C, A. And you know how many are in each arm, treatment arm. Ages are given, gender is given, race, ethnicity, information, and what is FEV? Force? So the units being measured is in? Clinical units are measured in? FEVs, right? It's not measured in dollars, amount, that's why it's a cost effectiveness analysis. 66% change in FEVs, 68 and 67. Are there some difference in them? No, right? Almost by a decimal, 1 percentage point only change. And what about, what's the last one? Average use of
Yes. Little slight change, 0.2.
get the units of that. Oh yeah, there it is. No. So FEVs are defined. That's just a volume of canister we use, okay? So that's 1.5 per month, 1.6 and 1.4. Now what does table 2 say? Again, the three alternatives are there. And exhibit 2 is giving you efficacy and cost information. So here are the clinical outcomes. Number of change, percentage change in FEVs. Greater than or 12% basically, that's the baseline starting point. And the change is 35%, and the unit FEV is 77. In brackets, you give you the change 60%, 126, and 130 and 61%. You can see it goes up percentage. And number of symptom-free days, asthma symptom-free days. So the first one is 900, 9900, that's one number. 45 is the number of days per patient, and 25% change. And again, 18900 symptom-free days. You have to see how it's coming up with, okay? For, how do you get 9900? You multiply, what if you multiply 220 with the,
We're doing good as well.
I think it's multiplying how many patients there are with 77, maybe that's what you tried. So you have to play around with these numbers. This is given to you, this data. Symptom-free 3 days and all that. And then it gives you 6-month costs in terms of medication, unscheduled office visits, emergency ER visits, hospitalizations, and then total cost adds up. Okay? Again, it's here, it's in brackets, is per patient. So you divide 112,835 by the number of patients, 210, you should get this answer. You divide how many 230 patients by the total cost, you get 381 per person. So you're getting some unit costs in this. I think below it tells you what FEVs are, and SFB is the symptom-free days, and ICS is the corticosteroid. So the assignment is, that's baseline data that's given to you.
Didn't know.
So the assignment, which is there in exhibits 1 and 2, is to complete a few exercises, complete this table. What's the average cost effectiveness ratio? So if you see my bullets from earlier, my tables in the PowerPoint and your textbook, it tends to take the average. So the success rate was in percentages. SMDs per patient, cost per patient, you just complete it for each of these alternatives. And success was that if the improvement was greater than 12% improvement in FPVs. So that's one task to do, get the average cost effectiveness ratio. And the other one was to do the incremental cost effectiveness ratio. You compare breathe again with ICS, asthma be gone with ICS, and then asthma be gone versus breathe again. And see which one is dominant or not, and so on. And then below you write whether this dominates that or not, you know. It's the same thing as a simple example of the PowerPoint. Once you do that, dominate, you can put the results in the grid as I was showing you earlier. Whichever is dominant, higher effectiveness, lower cost, it dominates. It's dominant. Here, along this one is where you find the cost effectiveness ratio. It is lower cost and higher effective. So you end up in this cell I between these three alternatives and we place them over here. The answer. And this I just put in there from the cost analysis chapter. We talked about discount rates. You can do this for practice, okay? You know, if the discount rate is costs are assessed in the beginning of the year, I've underlined that. So what's the present value? In the beginning of the year, what's the present value? $5,000. It's going to be $5,000, right? There's no discounting. So this is on chapter, the cost analysis chapter, where there's discounting, present value analysis. So that's for practice. What do you want to do now?
How did you get the
Which one?
9,900 number of the same 3 days? Huh? What?
They multiply. It
Did
says
someone
it's
do that?
Times 25. Oh, okay, because I
How do you do it?
multiplied this, I think. Let me do it.
So you basically try to understand how you got these numbers. But you pick up the numbers from here, whichever ones you want to pick. Essentially, your job is to do this, but the baseline is something given to you. So how do you get 9,900 as you
Okay, I got it.
How do you do it?
Oh, it's 220 times 45.
220 multiplied by 25?
45.
45, right?
Where did it go?
That's the symptom-free days. 45 symptom-free days for 220 patients. $9,900. In 6 months, sorry. So you're taking. So for this table, which one are you looking at? For success on one second. Yes.
I just texted, she sent it, what did she say? You should put in, when you are available. Did you get that? Yeah, I sent it to her. She didn't respond to it. For this new figure,
Okay, guys. Any questions?
you're gonna be fired if you
Okay, so here's this one on the.
I'm telling you, you have to do it twice. She has suspension. You just tell her to call me when someone calls me. Yeah.
Dr. Mathur,
Yes, sir.
so for the success, are we looking at the number of percentage with
For
LEB?
the success, we put the percentage, right? For ICS and placebo, what's the success rate?
There's an email that
25%. Symptom free days, what?
just needs
45.
45. Cost per patient is 320. It's given to you in the dollars, right? $320 was given to you,
Okay, I see.
right? The success rate is 45 days. Percentage is 35%. And the cost per patient was given below to be $320 for the first outcome. Then for breathe again, it's 60% for success rate and 90 for symptom free days, and cost per patient was 537. Yeah, I already took my call. Okay, this for me though. I could complain to the because see, that's what benefit cost ratio is. Depends who's calling me. Whichever. I can see whether I'm going to lose 5 minutes. It's important, otherwise I let it ring. It's always decision making. You pause. Well, she must be having some call which will be.
Where did you get it?
So you know where the data is coming for success, symptom free days, and cost per patient, right?
Yes.
So then you have to talk about average cost per success. So you convert the percentage to decimal points, 0.35. So if you divide 45 by 0.35, what do you get? $914. Average is gotten how?
Dividing.
How do you get 914? I'll take my calculator. So you take cost per patient was 320, right? 320 divided by 0.35 will give you 914.
Yes.
Likewise, symptom free days, you take 320 is the cost, divided by 45, you get what? 7.11? Someone should say yes or no. Yes? So that's how you populate that table. Each of those alternatives, you get the average cost per success, average cost per SFD. Pretty straightforward, right?
No.
Yes.
Where do you get it?
Decimals or they don't count?
Pardon me?
Do you take the decimals? Do you take the decimals?
You take the percentage in decimals. You can't divide it by a percentage sign. You have to take 0.35, 0.6 and 0.61. So while you're working on this, I'll take roll call, okay? is absent. Ashitabi, Roger. Roger is absent. Ashitabi. Yeah, I didn't hear you, sorry. Kristen. Leslie. Aya. Caleb. Caleb is absent. Minhui. Armando. Jennifer. Kang Shaw. Kang. What's that? Last name is what, Chow?
Hey, he went to the restroom.
Is Chow here or not?
He's here.
Great.
He went to the restroom.
Andrea? Gang? Is absent? Why, how many people are absent today? What's going on again?
Exam.
Maya Davis? But the exam is not today, you said.
Right, but it's Monday.
Well, they're clearing off today for Friday next week. Joanne?
So we get follow-up on this one today.
Georgia? Michaela? Is absent. Peter?
Here.
Is here. John? Michael? Kiki? Okay. Nicholas Ellis? Here. Stephanie? Stephanie is absent. How? Anthony? Han Huang? Gog? Dan? Diane? Autumn? Autumn is absent.
Yes.
Brianna? Jessica Jenkins? Jessica is absent. Mia Johnson? Mia is absent. Latifa? Farah Jones? Jasmine Jones? Daniel? Hui Lam? Dali? Dali is absent. Henley? Christina Lewis?
Here.
Hasib Malik is absent. Stephanie?
Ma'am?
Yep. Janai Minga? Linda?
Yes.
Andre? Ring? Lynn?